This is North Pod, a North Melbourne fan podcast, hosted by Jason Hunt.
Stevenson with his own move. Carrington. North are in front.
Hello, and welcome back once again to North Pod. We are reviewing the round 8 game against the Essendon Bombers down at Windy Hill. We're now 8 rounds into the season, 9 matches, and our dominance continues. It's North flag North, flag Roos, whatever you want to, whichever flavour you'd like. We've got a percentage of 335, so absolutely dominant in that way. And we continued on our merry way on this Sunday afternoon. Good day of footy, headed down, and love the atmosphere, love the game. And we are flying high at the moment. From our 9 matches, we've conceded only 160 points, which is an average of about 18 points a game. And we are averaging 60 points per game. Both of those are best in the comp. So, we are massive. 42 points is our average winning or average margin of match based on that. We obviously had the draw against Geelong, which you have to take out if we were going to look at our average winning margin. And then I guess it'd go a little higher after that. So, we continue to dominate. Just a couple of games now left before the home and away season is over, and we can get stuck into finals. Let's jump into the game. It's just going to be a regular game review here. Team selection is the first thing, and there ended up being no changes to last week's side. Erica O'Shea was able to get up despite a leg complaint. Still at the time, it looked pretty serious when she went off the ground, but then post-game, the way that she was talking and the media was talking, it looked like it wasn't as serious as it might have been, and I guess that turned out to be true because she was able to play and didn't, to me, look to be hampered or impacted by that injury at all. So we go in unchanged. Still a couple of unlucky girls that are struggling to find a spot in this side, but healthy competition is great for us. So unfortunate for them, and it must be tough, but it means that we're playing some fantastic footy that really no one's finding their way out of the side due to form. Match result, another belting for us. 1 goal, 7 Essendon, and us 8 goals, 10, 58. So 51-point winners in the end. A really dominant first half. Kicked 3 goals in the first quarter, 3 goals in the second quarter, and put the game to bed pretty early. And that's been our want. That's what we've looked for over the past month or so, is just to put the games beyond doubt pretty early. And I thought we did a pretty good job of doing that. It was pretty swirly conditions at Windy Hill, so at times it was hard to be effective with disposal and take marks because the ball was swirling around. Essendon in particular really struggled to chain together more than a few disposals in a row, particularly in that first half. It's just they refused, they couldn't mark it, they couldn't hit a target, and our pressure was just too much for them. As the game wore on, things did even out a little bit. Second half was 2 goals to 1, so not quite as dominant as that first half, but we were up 41-1 at half time, so the damage was absolutely done by that point. And like I said, we dominated territory, dominated possession, and we're just able to put the score on the board early. And I don't want to say we put the cue in the rack, because I don't think we did, but as fans watching it, you were certainly able to relax. And I think that's what is one of the fantastic things about being a North Melbourne fan in the women's competition at the moment, is it's just a relaxing game to watch. I never go in nervous. Potentially I might go in nervous next week, actually, but generally speaking, I don't go in wondering, are we a chance to get upset here? Because I just have so much confidence that the way that we play is going to win us games of football against the sides that we're supposed to beat. Coming up against those sides that are a little bit more competitive, I guess you worry a little bit. Like I absolutely am going into next week against the Crows with a fair bit of confidence. In terms of the second half, like I said, it got a bit more contested. It was a pretty dull third quarter. It was only 2 points to us and no score to Essendon, so no goals. And you could see Essendon really put a few more players around the ball, made it hard for us to penetrate too far. But then when they were kicking it out, they were often kicking it to our spare players behind the ball. So the third quarter was pretty dull, and then the last quarter we finally relented, and Bonnie Toogood kicked a goal for the Dons. Then we responded with 2 of our own to close it out in relative style. So like I said, a 51-point win, pretty standard win, pretty comparable to a lot of the other wins that we've had this year, where we've just put the game to bed in the first quarter and a half, and then cruised really from a scoreboard perspective to a 40 to 50-point win. We've done that several times this year, and we did it again. In terms of the story of this game, I think for me it was either going to be our pressure or our tools. I've decided I'll go with the tools. I just thought we had some really dominant players in that front half that were marking it well and kicking goals. So a lot of it was, a lot of our goals were created or directly, the tools were directly responsible for them, or they were indirectly responsible. And that was the majority of our goals. Shierlaw kicked 3 goals, 1, and had a goal assist. Talia Randall kicked 2 goals, 2, and had a goal assist. And Emma King kicked 1 goal, 1, and also had a goal assist. So between them to have 6 goals, 6 goals, 4, and 3 goal assists, that's the vast majority of our scoring there. They also took 5 of our 6 contested marks, and most of those were inside 50, if not all. So yeah, just a really dominant game from the tools. Generally speaking, we've had 1 or 2 get off the chain, but I thought all 3 of them had a significant impact on the game. Emma King probably should have finished with 2 goals or 3 goals. She was a little inaccurate. Shierlaw definitely took advantage of her opportunities, and Randall does what she does. She kicked 2 goals in a pretty opportunistic manner, and just applied a lot of pressure with that manic aggression that she has towards the footy. In terms of our other goal kickers, Garner and Wall kicked 1 each, so they were the other 2. But yeah, I just thought to have the tall players really dominating around or in that front half. We know Emma King also will spend some time in the ruck when Rennie's not in there, but yeah, I thought the 3 of them were a fantastic 1-2-3 punch, if you will. We also took 11 marks inside 50 to Essendon's 3. So, in general, it was just us out-muscling and out-reading their defenders in the air. Like I said, we took a couple of contested marks in that way. And, you could just see that we were reading the ball a little bit better when it was swirling around. Jazzy Garner was able to take her mark after a ball that was essentially ended up going backwards before it landed to her. And Shierlaw, I thought a couple of her marks, the kick wasn't really to her advantage, but she just made it work with her ability to read where it was going to drop a little faster than her opposition. So, yeah, just a really dominant performance from the tools. And I just think, honestly, at the moment, it's that perfect balance across all 3 lines. They're humming, but to have the tools in, we know Sheilaw's been a little bit in and out with injuries and being rested, whilst the other 2 have been mainstays in there. And at times, I have wondered if we looked a little too tall, mostly during those wet weather games, to be fair. But I think when we've got players at ground level that are so dangerous, and the tools are relatively mobile, like Randall is certainly a very mobile player. Shierlaw is quick. I don't know if I'd describe her as agile, but she's definitely, quick in a straight line. And Emma King's a ruckman, or ruckwoman. So, similarly, she's pretty mobile. Certainly not the fastest, but again, like when she's leading, full chest at the footy, it's pretty hard to get past her and get around her. So, yeah, a massive win for us in the front half with our tools, and they take some fantastic form. But I mean, every line of the ground, like I said, is in some fantastic form. And I think, yeah, the fact that I think Shierlaw, she only kicked the first 2 or 2 of the first 3 at least. She had 2 to quarter time, and it was just her ability to take the game by the scruff of the neck at the start. She was super impactful when it mattered, I thought. So I guess that's a good link to the 5 stars. This one was a really hard to judge, in part because I was there, and sometimes you don't see every aspect of the game when you're there. It can be a little bit hard to see some of the nuance, particularly around stoppage or when the ball's on the other side of the ground. But by the same token, I just thought it was a really even performance. There wasn't probably a standout in this game. It was just a really even performance where I thought, most players played their role or exceeded that in some way. So for the 4 stars, or the best player, I've gone with Kate Shierlaw. 3 goals, 1, like I said, 10 disposals, 6 marks, 1 of those contested, a goal assist. And I just think, when you kick 3 out of your side's 10 goals and you kick the 2 early to have that impact when the game's on the line, I think you deserve the 4. It's the second time this year I've given her the 4 votes after her 5-goal performance earlier on in the year. So 2 BOGs for Kate Shierlaw. Her second season at North is proving to be a really strong goal-kicking season, and she's well in the running to be the leading goal kicker for the AFLW competition. Speaking of which, her second goal for the day took her to 50 career AFLW goals, so that was a nice little milestone for her to hit as well. But yeah, aside from that, I mean, I've really covered it. She was the best tall on the field, kicked the 3 goals, and had some really, really, really good marking. So Kate Shierlaw, the 3 votes. Jazzy Garner can consider herself unlucky. She's had the 3 or 4 best on grounds in a row coming into this game. And I think that Shierlaw has just pipped her. So Jazzy Garner not far behind on 3 votes here. 24 disposals, 1 goal, 7 tackles, 6 clearances, 400 metres gained, 6 inside 50s. And I just think was our best mid, did her contested stuff, had the most contested possessions on the ground for us. Did what she does as a beast on the inside, looked for her teammates all day, was unselfish. It was a classic opportunity where she went forward and I think should have just kicked the goal, but tried to kick it short and it didn't come off. But, you know, when a player's being unselfish, I think you kind of have to, you know, you lean into that and you take the good with the bad on that one. I don't think it was her best game by any stretch, but given the fact that she's been racking up best on grounds, you know, it's not too much of a problem because her standard is so high. So, yeah, I just think she toiled away all day. Another one of those ones where she's getting meterage on the ball, she's going inside 50 and doing damage, I suppose, is the thing. I think the vast majority of her disposals were damaging. Sure, she turned it over a couple of times, but besides that, I would say she had 20 touches of her 24 that, you know, were impactful in some way, whether it was meters gained or directly putting someone else out into space, those kinds of things. So, yeah, just another Jazzy Garner performance. I'm sure the umpires won't see it that way, but I think she was the best midfielder on the ground in the winning side. And then speaking of midfielders, this is a midfielder that I have no doubt neglected a little bit at times this year with the voting, but it's just such a hard side to get votes in. Mia King, I think, deserves the 2 votes. 16 disposals, 3 marks, 9 tackles. We know she's a tackling beast. 4 clearances, 2 inside 50s. And I think, you know, it was a typical Mia King performance. You could almost back her in to have a game not dissimilar to this, you know, 9 times out of 10. I think she was the cleanest in the contest early on. I know I was a little bit critical of her earlier in the year because her disposal wasn't fantastic, but I thought, yeah, she was really clean in the contest, had some great quick hands around stoppage, and was one of those, like I mentioned with Jazzy Garner, was finding space for her teammates by hand. So strong over the ball, the way that she attacks the footy, and that's something that when you're at the ground, it's quite noticeable. The quickness with which she moves and how decisive her movements are. Yeah, I think she's been pretty unlucky this year not to poll more votes. I know I gave her a 3 votes at one point, so I think she's on to 5, but she's quite often at what I would think is maybe a 5th or 6th best player, so pretty unlucky in that way. But yeah, I just think it was a typical Mia King performance. She did what she needed to do. She's the no-nonsense mid that you need in the side, where when there's others that are getting the credit like Garner and like Riddell, and, you know, the players on the outside are likely to be a bit more noticeable. Mia King just gets her hands dirty, gets it out to those players, and yeah, I thought it was a consistent game from her, and she's had a consistent year, so I definitely think she's earned some votes. And I've gone with 1 vote for Tess Craven. 15 disposals, 2 marks, 4 tackles, 1 goal assist, 8 intercepts, which was a game high, and 87% disposal effectiveness. Played a fantastic assured role behind the ball. A little bit of wing time as well as that half-back role. And yeah, I just thought she read the play really well, played a role communicating behind the footy, read the play without any issues throughout, and was a great communicator in that back half, making sure that everyone's set up. It's interesting because she certainly looks more powerful at the ground than she does on TV, Tess. I thought that she attacked the footy really well and had some great spoils and intercepting, like I said, had the 8 intercepts. So similar to Mia King, it's a bit of a reward for consistency. I think Tess has been around the mark in several games this year. So, you know, obviously it's not a 1 vote out of sympathy or anything like that. I just do think she has earned, you know, the right to be in the votes for a game, because she had a phenomenal game, I thought, particularly given that the ball spent a lot of time in our attacking half. You know, she was spending the majority of her time setting up and making sure she was in the right spot whenever that quick kick came away. She also did a good job at transitioning the footy when the odd times that we were moving out of the deep in our defensive line, she linked up with players like Bresnahan and was sort of the one making those moves. So I think she was deserving of the vote. So just to recap those, 4 Shierlaw, best on for me, Jazzy Garner 3, Mia King 2, and Tess Craven 1. And like every week, plenty of unlucky players. I think Randall with her 2 contested marks and 2 goals too definitely could have scored a vote or two. Bresnahan, I've mentioned her a couple of times now. She was fantastic with Craven behind the footy and probably one of her better games for the year, I think, for Nicole Bresnahan. Riddell accumulators per always. I think she had 24, 25 touches. But it's similar to the other week. I'm just not sure that her impact was as high as some other players. But again, I think possibly that's the old. She's getting judged on a pretty harsh standard. She certainly had a really good game, and I thought Amy Smith probably had one of her best games for the year. A really clean game on the wing. I think it was a career high in disposals for her, and she's one of those unassuming types that is a lock when she's fit, but doesn't necessarily stand out or do the flashing things. But yeah, I thought she was really assured, had some clean disposals, and could probably consider herself pretty unlucky not to get in the votes as well. So yeah, as always, I always feel like there's an absolute smorgasbord of options for the 2 and the 1 vote. Generally there's a standout 1 or 2, but it's just such an even side at the moment, which is fantastic. I'd much prefer to have an even side and to be struggling to fit everyone in the votes. Whereas at times when I was following the men's side earlier in the year, you'd look at a game and go, how am I going to give 4 people votes in this game, because there was only really 2.5 that did their job. So yeah, fantastic from all of those players. In terms of the best opposition player, I mean, it was definitely between Prespakis and Maddie Gray. I've gone with Prespakis, 29 disposals, 6 tackles, 5 clearances, 3 inside 50s, and just toiled away. They tried their best to rebound it and move the ball along. She wasn't always clean, Prespakis, but I thought she read things pretty well. She tried to link up when she had her mates there to support her, and yeah, I thought she was a solid contributor, did her part for the team, or at least did what she could for the team. Just didn't have enough helpers, unfortunately, and the ball spent so much time at ground level in the Essendon defensive half of the ground, and I thought that both Gay and Prespakis did their best in that scenario. So yeah, either of those, I'm going with Prespakis though for best on for the Dons. In terms of what the North Podium standings look like, we're now 9 games in, so nearly through the home and away. Jazzy Garner really pulling away now, 27 votes, 10 clear of Riddell on 17. Shierlaw moves up into 3rd on 8 votes after a second best on ground performance. And then O'Loughlin not far behind on 7. Birch, Randall and Mia King on 5 votes. And then there's some 3-2-1s underneath that. So Garner, Riddell and Shierlaw currently on the podium. The voting will be continuing into the finals. So it's not a certainty that Jazzy Garner wins yet, but certainly she has the home and away North Podium Award locked away, I suppose, if you want to look at it from that perspective. And yeah, I mean, Riddell had a really, really, really strong start to the year, but Garner has just stayed consistent. And we know that's what Jazzy Garner does. She's the best player in the comp, in my opinion, at least. I don't watch a heap of the other footy, so I don't profess to be across it, but we're not. Based on what I see her do week in, week out, I think it'd be pretty tough to find another player that can do half of what she can. She's just so strong. Anyway, we could go on all day about Jazzy Garner, but there's other things to discuss. A quick reminder for all of my North Pod listeners, thank you so much, first of all, for being a listener. I do really appreciate it. Please do help me get the word out there, particularly if there's some North Melbourne fans in your life that are particularly AFLW fans. Share the podcast with anyone that you know. Help me get the word out there. Subscribe on your chosen podcast service, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Leave me a review and a rating if you can. And please do get involved with my social media accounts at NorthPod Show. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all those good places. If you would like another way to support the show, I've got to buy me a coffee. I do promise to buy a sugary Coke with that contribution as opposed to a coffee, as I'm not a coffee drinker. But I do really appreciate the support that I've gotten from everyone during the year. So we need to have a look at some positives and some negatives, and I always do start with the negatives. A tough game in some ways to summarise, just because there was there's so many minutes within the game that were just kind of dead minutes while the ball was not doing a lot. So finding some specific talking points, I found it a little bit more challenging than I have in other weeks, but don't you worry, I've still found some talking points. I think in terms of negatives, there were definitely some moments that we'd want back to try again if we were playing a better side. So hopefully these are the sorts of things that will come up in the review during the week. Emma King took a shot in the third quarter at goal that didn't make the distance, and it certainly, she was having a shot from the sort of range that I think you should have someone on the line. We didn't have anyone on the line. Part of that was because Shierlaw had led into space out the front, but she's not the only player in our front half. So, you just need to have a player there that's either available to take the mark or at least help get the ball through. An Essendon player should have taken an uncontested mark on the line, as they did for most of the day. That Essendon player dropped it, and that led to a contested ball situation. But to have no one on the line is a bit of a concern. So that should be addressed, I would think. That's such an easy thing to do. Alice O'Loughlin could have run into an open goal. I think that was in the first quarter. Chose to kick it a little earlier and unfortunately missed. It was a bit of an almost game for Alice. But again, that's a moment where a bit of talk from your teammates and a bit of backing yourself in, and she runs into the goal square and scores. And I just think, there was a bit of, at times when the ball did get into our defensive half, we were a little bit fumbly at times. We invited pressure. Again, in that third quarter, because we had so much time and space, we were eventually able to mop it up and get the ball going our way again. But, that was only because we had so much time. I think, against a better side, that kind of situation, it's probably resulting in a stoppage at centre-half back as opposed to us then relaunching it. So, yeah, hopefully they're the sorts of things that we look at during the week and we discuss how we can improve on those. I mean, I think for the Alice O'Loughlin one, you've got to back yourself and you've got to have your teammates talking to you. The Emma King one is such an easy one. If someone's having a kick at goal from anywhere other than the goal square, it's not hard to have someone on the line. You've just got to, just in case anything can happen. My recollection is that she was kicking from about 35 to 40 metres out, so I don't know why you wouldn't have someone on the mark, particularly given how swirly it was. That's the sort of thing that you'd like to address. So again, didn't really cost us in this game. We obviously were dominant, but again, if you're coming up against the Crows next week, for example, you'd want to have those kinds of things ironed out, I would think. Another nitpick here, we smashed them at stoppage, so I'm certainly not going to critique our stoppage numbers. It was 34-20 win for us, but I do think we get a little bit more bang for buck going forward from the front of the stoppage. We ran out the front of the stoppage several times and then just weren't able to find a target. We were often trying to hit this chip kick that it probably wasn't on in the conditions. We probably just needed to back ourselves and kick it long and then go to the contest where we're going to get even numbers, and more times than not we win the contest if it's even numbers around the footy. Those short kicks inside 50 they really didn't mostly come off in this game. They invited pressure and allowed Essendon to slingshot a little bit coming out of their half back as opposed to the deep area of the ground. So this is a team thing, not any one player. I thought most of our clearance work was not great today in terms of when we actually were clearing it from the stoppage. I thought, our hands around the stoppage was great. As soon as then we were kicking it forward, I just think we could have been a bit more efficient. I'd love to see us in conditions like this just dump it long and trust that Randall or Shierlaw are going to make a contest. We saw that come off a couple of times today, but yeah, there was just a few times where we were going short, which, is an unselfish and in theory, that's what you want to do. You want to bring your teammates into it. But when it was swirling around so much and oftentimes you're trying to hit this chip kick that really ends up being only 15 metres because you're on the move and they're on the move, I just think we can get more meterage on the ball. A lot of the time, AFLW is about just getting that meterage on the ball, getting it to the next contest and then seeing what you can do from there. And yeah, I just think that there'd definitely be some stoppages where you'd look at it again and you go, okay, what's the best move for us offensively? Is it to kick it long to Emma King and back her to market? Or is it that we try and hit Bella Eddy on the lead with their player right on her and several players in between that we have to avoid? I know what I'd be picking in that scenario, but again, I'm nitpicking here. In general, we dominated the contested footy and our clearance work. We were 14 up in the clearances, and that was not just one type. It was centre clearances and stoppage clearances. So you'll certainly take that. It's just that that finishing touch when you're streaming forward and you want to hit a target. And then the only other negative really that I could pull out of this game was, like I said, I went to the game, I was sitting in the stands, and I don't know how I seemed to do this, but I was sitting in front of the one bloke who just would not shut up about the free kicks. And of course, we did win the free kick count, but I just don't know what this bloke wanted. I just can't stand this type of supporter that just goes to the footy to complain about the umpiring. I'm just not sure what he wants the umpires to do, because if the free kicks are there, they have to be paid. And of course, the umpires are not perfect. We know that. But I'm sorry, that at the footy just really grates on me. Like, I understand that some people like to go to the footy to get some frustration out and to shout the players and the umpires, but if you're going to come to the footy and just shout frustrations at the umpires, I think find something else to do with your time, honestly. Anyway, I seem to have found that kind of person at the footy several times this year. I know I've mentioned it in earlier podcasts, and if that's my greatest negative coming out of the game, I think we're going okay. But yeah, it was a tough place to find a good place to watch the game, because I thought the stands wasn't ideal. We often had a lot of people walking past us, and like I said, I had this bloke behind me that was doing my head in. And then there's just not a lot of other elevated places to watch the game. Like, that's what we get at these venues, I suppose, but probably just need to get there a little bit earlier and set up higher in the stands. It was a good atmosphere, and I certainly wouldn't judge my experience at the AFLW based on this one person, but by golly, I don't know how I found this one person, but anyway, I digress. I should have brought something to block my ears like my partner did, Shannon. That was a great idea by her, because she could barely hear him, and all I could hear was, that's 7-2 free kicks. That's 7-2 free kicks. All right, mate. Like, we know. Sorry that your player tackled us high. Like, what do you actually want? Let's move to the positives, because I can see myself getting frustrated again as I take myself back there. Plenty of positives, and I thought, like I mentioned off the top, it was either the tools that I gave story of the game, or it was our defensive pressuring, and I think our defensive pressuring was just elite. 82 tackles to 62, 12 tackles inside 50 to 8, 28 1%ers to 18. All of those obviously defensively focused statistics, and you could see it at the ground. We were frenetic with our pressuring. The Dons just had absolutely no time or space all day, particularly in the first half. They found it virtually impossible to transition the footy or just get 2 or 3 disposals in a row. The first half, they were dropping everything in terms of marks, and yeah, every disposal was under a pretty immense pressure, which meant that their effectiveness was pretty low. In the second half, they just went for it with some risky kicks through the corridor, and that did work a couple of times, but they were very rarely able to get all the way. Like I mentioned, they were able to kick that one goal from Bonnie Toogood, which resulted from a couple of these risky kicks, and I think a free kick or two as well. Should have asked that bloke what he thought about it. We moved in the last quarter because we thought the ball wouldn't be spending too much time at the stands end, and we were right for the most part. But yeah, like I said, the pressure was really immense, and you could see that Essendon just had absolutely no time, and that's not just the defenders. I think that was the whole team were frenetic with their tackling. Often you'll see, in a game where you dominate, you end up with less tackles because you've spent so much time with the footy, but not the case in this one. There was enough time where the ball was in dispute and our players were tackling really hard. And that was players like Ruby Tripodi in the middle had 10 tackles, Mia King 9, Amy Smith and Jazzy Garner 7, Riddell and Bruton 6. So all those midfielder types were really getting in and tackling hard. Our only players without a tackle, our 2 key backs, Birch and Ferguson, and our key forward, Kate Shierlaw. Everyone else had at least a tackle, and like I said, we had Tripodi, Mia King, dominating with 9 and 10. So mass amount of pressure whenever Essendon had the ball, and our defensive setup behind the footy was just fantastic. That was something that was a lot easier to see at the ground. Consistent communication. We didn't worry about individual opposition players, but we were worrying about guarding that dangerous space and then adjusting where we were based on where the players were, but not necessarily manning up directly on them. We backed ourselves every time we turned it over. We'd back ourselves to run out to that fat side and try and create some space. And there was a couple of times where we got that going. It wasn't a game where we were necessarily able to transition the footy through chains of handballs and kicks too consistently, but we certainly were able to move the ball to the next contest, create another contest, and then win that and move it forward again. So a lot of that came from the defensive structures. Those players that I mentioned earlier, like Craven, like Ferguson and Birch and Sarah Wright, all of those defensive types that were just really in sync with each other, a super well-drilled side. They know exactly where each other are and where the next player needs to run to as well. So, yeah, I thought that was a really impressive defensive performance from the whole side, but obviously in particular, the midfielders in their tackling and the defensive players in the way they were sitting up behind the footy. Another positive, we just continue to put these games to bed early and just save stress. I mentioned this off the top, but we've been a lot more emphatic with the way that we start games this year, I think. At times last year, we would win, but we'd sort of muck around with a little bit, and that's why we weren't able to beat those other sides or those better sides until finals time last year. I think we were just able to get it in long to the tools while everyone's fresh, hit the scoreboard hard, hit the contest hard rather, so that we could hit the scoreboard. And either those tools were marking it or we were crumbing it. Vicky Wall's goal was a great example of that. Shierlaw just made a contest, hit a body hard, made sure that the ball hit the ground, and then Wall was able to crumb accordingly. I'm fairly sure that was her only disposal in the first half, but it just doesn't matter because if your only disposal in that half is crumbing it and then kicking a goal, you've done your job. I talked about Alice O'Loughlin earlier. She had an almost game, but was super opportunistic in those situations as well. We're just a really no-nonsense side in the first halves of games at the moment, and I am here for it. It just relaxes you, and we were better at it this game obviously than last week against Sydney because we allowed them to score a few last week, whereas we shut Essendon out completely. And the game was done really halfway through the second quarter, like it has been several times this year. So love that we're able to jump out of the blocks and put teams away super early. And then the last thing, again harking back to last week's game, I thought we sorted out the territory battle a lot better this week. Last week, the inside 50 count was pretty even, and there were times where the ball spent there was a lot of time the ball spent in Sydney's half of the ground, which is a little unusual for us. We were able to defend really well, so it didn't necessarily impact us in the end on the scoreboard, but I didn't love that. I would have loved to see us moving the ball forward better than we did. And this week, I think we really sorted that out. The ball spent a lot more time in our half, won the inside 50 count 40-17, so more than double them. And large parts of the game was spent in our front half, which is exactly what you want. That's how you're going to create scores in this league. It meant that when the Dogs did get those quick kicks out, generally it was heading to Ferguson or Wright or Birch, and an out number, and then we were able to handball to safety and then try and get it to someone like O'Shea or Bresnahan, who could then rebound it. Tess Craven's another one. I was just much happier with the ball sitting sort of 70 metres out for us, as opposed to deep inside our defensive 50 like it was last week. And hopefully we can carry that territory dominance into the Crows game next week, because we're going to need to have that ball sitting in our front half for more of the game than the opposite of that, because again, that's how games of footy are won at AFLW level most of the time. I'd say that game last week against Sydney is a bit of an anomaly. I think generally speaking, you want the ball in your half so that you can get to that next contest. And yeah, like I've said about 16 times this episode, you can get to that contest, win it at that contest, and then get it forward to the next one. And I just think we did a fantastic job around the footy and in all aspects of the game, to be honest. It was a pretty, besides those little nitpicks that I was able to pick out in the negatives, it was a pretty complete performance from a side that just keeps marching on. It's such an easy side to watch play football at the moment. So I mentioned it a couple of times, but next week, Friday the 25th of October, so it's a short turnaround, 7:45, we are playing the Crows in Adelaide, or more accurately at Norwood, so away, and this is our last big home and away match. We do play Gold Coast the week after, who are sitting last, so not as big a match, but we know the Crows have been a good side. They are a good side. They're in the top four, and it's our final big test before finals. Top spot is still at stake. The Hawks continue their winning ways, so they're only sitting 2 points behind us. They do have Melbourne and the Tigers to come, so tough games for them, and potentially they could drop one of those and make our life a little more simple. But you would think if we are able to beat the Crows on Friday night, then we will finish top. I just cannot see how we would lose to the Gold Coast Suns. I know footy's a funny game, but I just can't see it. So yeah, interestingly, the shorter turnaround, hopefully we're able to get everyone up for it. This is definitely one that you do not want to be resting anyone unless you absolutely have to, unless they're injured. Sarah Wright did limp off late in the game, so hopefully that was just a corky or something similar to that, and she's able to play again. We definitely want our best 21 playing next week, despite it being off the shorter break. There was nothing about an injury to her in the match report, so yeah, hopefully it was just something minor. And yeah, massive Friday night game against the Crows, prime time, which is exciting, and what a game to be at prime time. The Crows have just beaten Collingwood by 43 points, so they're in some good form, albeit they've had a couple of losses in recent weeks. Lost to Melbourne the week before, smashed the Giants, just beat St Kilda, and lost to the Lions. So they're 2-2, or now I think they're 3-2 from their last 5 games. So not necessarily in winning form, but cannot be underestimated, the Crows. Ebony Marinoff is going to be a problem. She's a super strong player through that midfield. So yeah, that's something I guess for us to look forward to. Our last big test before finals. I'm certainly looking forward to it. Friday night prime time is where I'd love to watch my footy. So yeah, I'll be tuning in from the comfort of my couch, given it's going to be in Adelaide. Yeah, I think that's gonna do it for the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I don't know yet if I'm going to have an episode during the week this week, or if I'll just wait for the weekend to review the next game. We'll have to wait and see how I'm feeling. It's a bit of a busier week for me. I do hope that you have a fantastic week. Weather's starting to warm up, so if you're someone that likes the warm weather, I guess that's an exciting time for you. I'm definitely a cold weather person, so I'm not looking forward to it, but I will survive. Yeah, have a great week, and I'll speak to you in the coming days. As I always say, go North. Thanks for listening to another episode of North Pod. If you give me a rating or review on your podcast service, that would be much appreciated. And please follow me on all social media at North Pod Show. I'm on X or Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and I'm also very active on the North Melbourne subreddit. Hope you'll join me for the next episode.